Northern California.
What's up, YouTube? It's artisanmc, and today I'm going to review Andor Episode 9, Nobody's Listening. Now, I know this review was coming at you kind of late, but I've been a little bit busy with some other things. So I took some time today to go ahead and knock it out for you so you can get some of my views on the episode before Episode 10 comes out. Now, I'll say this about this episode. It could seem like there's not a lot going on in Andor if you're just looking for light sirens and big explosions. It could seem like there's nothing going on in Andor. What the beauty of this show is that storytelling, character development, and character acting is what's important about this show. This is what sells the show for people who watch it. It's not about big explosions, space battles, or all the rest of that stuff. It's about what's happening with these characters in this scene and the performances that are coming out of these actors in this scene. I have to tell you, this episode does have some of my favorite performances, especially from the character of Deidre Miro. That character totally changed to where you would think in the last episode she was kind of a scary, unsure of herself person. In this one, she's outright kind of terrifying. She is kind of terrifying. Now, you get into this episode, and it picks up right where the last one left off, where you see Bix in the room with Deidre Miro, and she's going to be interrogated about the use of the rebel antenna that they found. And as we know, on Ferrix, the Empire has moved in, and they have been drilling down, as Deidre put it, in that area to look for Cassian Andor. And they are on the hunt for Cassian because they're on the hunt for the person that they call Axis, which we as the viewing audience knows as Luthen. Okay? Now, they're looking for this person, and Cassian Andor is the key to finding that person. And they are beating the bushes and burning down houses to find Cassian Andor. Now, at this point in the show, you see Deidre Miro a little bit more empowered. That she has got to go ahead from Pradegas's, Major Pradegas's supervisor to go ahead and do what she needs to on Ferrix to try to weed out this Axis person. And sure enough, she's in there with Big D energy, on the whole place. So when she's in the room with Bix, she is completely confident in what she's doing. Now, this kind of falls back on Deidre's past to where she was some kind of officer before she got brought into the ISB. And Pradegas had told her earlier in the season that was why she was brought on, that bring those skills to bear. And you see her bringing these skills to bear at this moment. She is completely, it seems like, in her element, that she has a suspect and she wants information and she's going to get that information. Now, she does all the perfunctory stuff, the baiting and trying to psychologically mess with Bix before she even gets to the interrogation part. But she does something really interesting in the sense that she gives her all the information that she knows. She tells her flat out because she wants the information that's in her head. Now, how that ends up occurring and what Bix learns through that conversation is that Deidre doesn't care what she knows or not about these questions. She wants to actually torture her. And you get the first indication here that Deidre is kind of a sadist. She gets off on this Empire power and just putting people under her thumb and just slowly squashing them. That's what it is. She wants to torture Bix. She don't care about her, whatever the hell she tells her. It doesn't matter. And Bix figures that out and tells her, it doesn't matter what I tell you. You're not going to believe me. And it's just like, yeah, you goddamn right. Now, what's so good about it is the performance. The performance that the actress that's playing Deidre is given. She is kind of chilling. She is kind of chilling. You can see it in her eyes. She is in character. She is in that character. And that character in that instant becomes immediately terrifying. And you worry about Bix's life. Like, you might not make it out of here. I'm sorry. Through this interrogation, you get the introduction of Dr. Goss. And Dr. Goss has a new torture technique that the Empire is developing. Now, this is kind of interesting in the sense that it doesn't show up again in later movies, because you have to understand this Andor timeline happens before New Hope, happens before Rogue One. So this technology that they developed to torture Bix, which is new, you don't see it in New Hope. You don't see it anywhere else, right? It is what it is. It's an interesting torture technique, basically involving sounds, and apparently sounds of children from this, other race of people being tortured or dying. It sounds like it's a rough deal. And basically, what I enjoy about this is that you don't hear what the sound is. You don't. You get to know what the sound is by dialogue, by Dr. Gross telling you what it is. And you get the reaction from Bix in hearing it, but you never hear the sounds yourself. And that's a good, subtle thing to do that most people would miss out on in making a movie, because they just want to hear the sound. But for me, being a fan of old school horror movies, and the idea that it's better if you don't see the creature right up front, just know there's something in the dark and let your imagination fill in what it looks like and all the rest of that. It works the same way with this sound. A sound of alien children chorally screaming, amplified and magnified, that can cause madness, and putting that on somebody and leaving it on them. You can imagine what it would be for you. It may not be the same thing. It could, for me, it could sound like geese squawking. For you, it could sound like cats being ran through a blender. Okay, your imagination fills in whatever the worst sound you can think of is, and what you would not be able to stand listening to for long periods of time that would psychologically break you. Now this scene happens, and make no mistake, I don't blame Bix in this scene for actually giving up information on Andor. I don't, because one of the things you understand about military and interrogation is that everybody breaks. Everybody breaks. The difference is when you break. What you do when you break. Because everybody's going to break. Everybody has their limit. But in some ways, it's important to know what your breaking limit is. Bix was not trained for that. So I'm sure she broke quick. Hopefully she broke quick. Because the psychological seed was already planted by Daedra when she told her it's repeated uses that causes the damage. So she already put a counter in her head. That's what that was. All of that was psychological gains. From the moment they brought her in and Daedra wanted Pac to stay in that chair and pull him out of there after she saw him, it was a psychological manipulation to get her to give up information. Now, that was pretty masterfully done to me. So I'm not upset at Bix that she gave up any information that she had, because as a viewing audience, we've seen it. She ain't got that much information. Andor came, he had some money, he wanted, to give her some. She didn't want it, he bounced. She don't know where he went, and he didn't tell her. So she has nothing to really give up. All she really has to give up is Luthen. And if she doesn't really know his name, she just knows he shows up and what he looks like. That's about all they can get from her. So from there, you get to go back to Narkina 5 and Andor in his cells in the prison. Now, the whole prison setup, you're getting to see that some months have gone by And Andor's really used and in a flow with his team and everybody else. They're doing what they're doing. But he has started working with the team and start figuring out a plan of escape and working with other members in their pod to escape. And one of the people he's trying to work on is Kino Loy, the foreman of this group. And what you see Andor doing is a psychological game in and of itself as well, is that he is pressing Kino on his desire to escape and pressing him on that to get information out of him that Andor wants. But Kino is not playing along with that game with him. He understands what's going on. He doesn't want to play because Kino wants to stay focused on the goal that he has in mind. I have these 200 and so days. Let me do that. Or excuse me, 200 or so shifts. Let me do that and get out of here. That's what he wants to focus on, to keep everybody else focused on that goal. I will get out of here if I finish this 200 or so shifts. Andor is like, forget them shifts. Let's get out of here now, and we can get out of here if you can tell me some of this information. I can get you on board. Kino don't want no part of it. Kino just wants to do his work and get out of there. In some senses, the honest way. Now, what you see from this interaction is that on Andor's team, the older member of the team, Ulaf, is having some trouble. He's starting to break down. And through the course of the story, you find out that Ulaf has the shortest time in there. He has 40-something shifts. So he's getting close to that finish line, in a sense. But he's having some kind of health issues with him. Forgetting stuff, being slower, cramps in his hands and everything. No telling how long he's been there doing that. You don't know. You just know he's an older guy. Yes, it's supposed to be hard labor. You probably don't know what he's been suffering through. Now, while on the shifts, he's starting to fall behind and have some problems, and Andor gets the other guys to rally behind him, and they kind of help Ulaf along so they can keep up and keep staying ahead of the other teams on the pod so they don't have to get the shock treatment. But at the same time as doing that, Andor is working with other members of the pod on other tables, figuring out an escape plan to get out of here. Because his idea is on escape. It's not on doing that time. You're not thinking about that time. You're thinking about getting the hell out of there, which is good, right? Now, one of the things you see is that in the months that he's been there working out how this place works and how many guards and whatnot, one of his trips to the bathroom leads him to a panel in the wall that he is trying to cut what looks like a cable or a pipe. Now, for me, my understanding, this is probably that lift controls. This is probably some of the hydraulic lift controls for the lift that brings new prisoners into that pod. And this is why Andor is so fixated on knowing when the next guy will come in, because he's planning his moments. And one of the things he's doing in planning the moments is weakening one of those supports. It's either a support or a cable or a hydraulic line, something, just trying to put a hole in it so it doesn't work the way it needs to. Because once he's called out of that room because a new person is coming in, standing with another prisoner from the pod, he tells them about, okay, we stopped the lift halfway down. They can't leave. Well, how are you going to stop the lift? It's probably going to have something to do with those lines that are back down that hallway in the bathroom underneath the lift. That's what he's working on. Now, that is also going to go in conjunction of knowing which part of the room is actually electrified and which part isn't. And they now understand that the lift and the part above the floor is not electrified. There's no charge in it. That's why the guards are there. So the thinking for me is that if we can get on that lift, we're away from the immediate danger. Now we just need to know how many guards we have to take. And putting it together from when he came in to the cell block, you understand that there's only so many guards there. There's a small number of them, so they can be overpowered. Now, this is me understanding Andor in the show, is that Andor is really good at picking up stuff on the fly. He pays really close attention to a lot of things that you don't think he does. But he's always planning, always calculating just visually what's going on. And he's been in this place for months now. He's probably figured out his escape plan. There's only a little bit of information he's missing. And the person that he keeps pressing to get that information is Kino Loy. He has the information that he wants. So he keeps pressuring him to try to get him to give that information. Now, during the course of that shift, some other things in the prison happen to where the prisoners are being held up a little while in their tubes before they go back to their cell block. Now, this is where you get the understanding that things are going kind of bad for Olaf. He's looking worse and worse at the end of every shift. And though it may be taking a couple of days, he is, chances are he's not going to make it. He's not going to make it. Now, to leave the prison for a moment, the other part of this episode is minor in a sense, right? The part with Cyril Karn is interesting, but it's more of him sitting with his mother, eating his Cocoa Puffs and listening to his mother give him grief. Now, to me, this is just emblematic of everything I've seen in movies about Jewish families and Jewish mothers. It's like, all right, I'm tired of seeing this old lady just, messing with this dude and him being kind of a sad sack sitting up there just eating a cereal and listening to his mother's BS. It's I know it happens. I'm just not interested in this part. But what is interesting is that when Deidre Miro comes back from Phoenix, Cyril is outside the ISB headquarters and has been out there waiting on her. And they have an interaction. When she comes to work, she sees him and they have a little conversation. Now, what you find out has happened is that Cyril has actually been promoted since he had his little interrogation at the hands of the ISB at his office. Now, while he's congratulating Deidre on helping him with his promotion, and she's saying she had nothing to do with it, that he was questioned, you see what obsession is going on in Cyril, that he is really enamored and respecting her for wanting to get to the truth, and that truth will help clear his name. Now, this is the correction I want to make on a lot of people who have reviewed the show. I don't think Cyril is into Deidre. He's not. He's not into her like that. His obsession is not with Deidre Miro. His obsession is with catching Cassian Andor. And he is so fervent on that, he couldn't think about anything else. And as he tells Deidre, he wanted to end his life at some point. But because she came in and had the same desire for justice as he did, he is attracted to that. He wants to get on her team. He wants to be there with her, and he's trying to find a way for her to get him on that team. Now, Deidre is kind of thrown off by this because she's taking it like, okay, you've been stalking me, you kind of a creep. Where it's different that you're seeing this kind of unease out of this character that you just saw torturing another woman and enjoying it. It makes the character a little bit more complex, or it's just a little off. She is off put by how hard he's going on this. Even though in the last episode, she was the one who kind of gave him that spark, because she told him if he kept doing what he was doing, somebody higher than her would turn up. So she kind of goaded him into going harder. Like it was a test to see how much harder he would go. And apparently over that last month, he's gone really hard. He got a promotion and he really dedicated and he's been checking up on her and everything. And that could be freaking her out, or she could just be playing it up because she wants to use him as an asset. But I can tell you this, I think the Empire would have an interest in somebody that fervently after after justice and bringing some criminal to justice. I mean, isn't that what the Inquisitors were made up of? Fervently loyal people who wanted to kill Jedis? Why do you think it was any different than the rest of the Empire? This is the ISSB, the ISB. Now, you get out of that scene and you get to a scene with Mon Mothma. And you get to see Mon Mothma addressing the Galactic Senate. And you actually get to see what you've only heard about beforehand, how she's viewed in the Senate. And while she's sitting there addressing Senate and talking about the PORD and the overreach that the Emperor is making in powers and how it can be a creeping death in a sense, you see people sitting down and shutting off their pods. Why? Because they are not listening to her. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it from her. They are wrapped up in believing all this danger looms out there, and they are not listening to somebody talking about overreach. They don't want to hear it, and then turn it off. And what you see at the end of that scene is Mon Mothma crushed in her limo going back to the embassy. She's crushed because she was just getting shut down by the whole Galactic Senate. People were turning off their lights and didn't want to listen to her. But what perks her up a little bit is the driver telling her that her cousin has arrived. And she's kind of startled by this, that she's at the embassy and she's here. Yeah. And when she gets back to her house on the embassy, you find out that her cousin, who's also Chandelarian, is Vale. Vale, who helped organize the raid on Aldani and stole the $80 million. That Vale. That's her cousin. And I ain't saying this, but like I told you guys in the last episode, that bar that Cinta threw at her about a rich girl was not just a joke. It was a barb at Vale. And sure enough, in the next episode, you see Vale is a rich girl playing rebel. That she is related to Mon Mothma, related to money, and someone in the Senate. And she has got into this little rebel band through Luthen to do some separate little things. Now, Mon Mothma doesn't know what Vale is doing, but they both know they're part of the same thing. They just don't know what the other one is doing. So there can be no, get caught and I rat you out. And even when pressed by Mon Mothma, Vale doesn't reveal any of that stuff. All she does is regurgitate Cinta's words to her and try to make it sound a little firm. But you already know it's not, because you saw the last episode when Vale was just wanting to run away with Cinta, and Cinta told her no. No. Rebellion comes first. We take what's left. Cinta on mission. She on code. Vale was not. But she's propping that up to Mon Mothma that she is. She's not. So at some point in this, I expect to see her breaking or getting caught. Now, through this conversation with Vale and Mon Mothma and Piran, Mon Mothma's husband, you get to find out that nobody really knows that Vale is, I don't know if they call it a lesbian in the Star Wars universe or not, but Piran doesn't know that. Nobody really knows that, apparently, except for Mon Mothma. Because Piran makes a joke about her finding a husband while she was away for 6 months. And she makes another jab back that they're all taken, especially at her age. Well, she's not interested in a husband, obviously. But everybody else doesn't know that. It's not common knowledge. So you get a little bit more of what this rebel vibe in her is, which is just going against tradition and trying to fight against this empire. The earlier conversation that Mon Mothma has and that she discusses with Vale is the fact that Mon Mothma, through Tay, her friend Tay, um, those bank records, yeah, that's going to be a problem. She's been moving way too much money and doesn't have the records to cover it. And some of it will come up looking really strange on an imperial check, a scan of the accounts, which is coming. And she doesn't have a way to cover that. Now, she does mention this to Vale, but she doesn't tell Vale exactly what it is, not knowing that if she did, Vale could probably help her because Vale is the one who stashed the $80 million from Aldani. But Mon Mothma doesn't know Vale was a part of that. She has no clue, and Vale didn't tell her. So she can't give her cousin the help she needs. But what Mon Mothma found out from Tay is that she needs this $400,000, and there's somebody who can give it to her. And it's a guy named Dorfin, Sakloon or something, who's also a Chandelarian, but he's not a banker. And he's kind of a questionable dude. That he's into something that is not looked on very positively, but it does generate a crap load of money, which is what she needs. And Mon Mothma is really against dealing with this guy at all, which only means I really need to meet this guy. I really want to see who this character is, because that would be interesting for me. Now, with that understood, that Mon Mothma is in some trouble, and a little bit of financial trouble, that she's up against a wall right now, having to do something she's not comfortable with. And while she's talking to Vale and walking her out, she's letting on this. To me, Mon Mothma is at a point of doubt. She's not getting the support in the Senate. She doesn't have the money that she needs to cover this thing. She has to deal with somebody she doesn't want to deal with and hasn't decided on that yet. Mon Mothma at this point kind of wants out. If you didn't peep that, she does kind of want out. She is doubting, and that's why she's talking to Vale about what she's doing and what she isn't, and she should go back home for a while and just play the rich girl, because she wants to get out. And she's trying to feel her cousin out to see if her cousin wants to get out too. Her cousin ain't giving her that leeway. It's not. So Mon is left on her own to figure out what she's going to do. And that doubt is there for her because she's running the risk of being exposed and running the risk of having all of that blow up in her face. And she's questioning. She's questioning right now. Now, after that, you get the rest of this episode, which is what's going on in the prison, because this is the main story in this episode about what's going on in this prison. And basically what's happening in the prison is that everybody's making their prison break plans, but something happens in the prison. And while it's happening at the same time, Olaf is having his health is deteriorating in front of everybody. While they're all waiting on their catwalks to go back to their cells, and there's conflicting messages coming from the hand signals that they give each other from catwalk to catwalk, that something has gone down on level 2. They don't know what it is, but something serious has happened. And all of a sudden, the lights flicker and go out and then come back on. And everybody has to get on program. And the words start circulating, something's wrong on 2. Now, this is stressing Kino Loy out a little bit because he is responsible for keeping all these 49 other men in line. He is. He is their foreman of those 49 men. It's his job to keep them all in line, because not keeping them in line means they all get shocked. They all ride a little bit of lightning for that moment. He's trying to calm them down and attend to what's going on with them. And Andor uses this moment to feed more doubt into Kino Loy, who starts to doubt a little bit what is going on. He doesn't really know what's going on now. Now, between that and the next shift, when the shift change happens again 12 hours later, what was being told to them before is flushed out in the sense that something has happened on level 2. It's bad. It's really bad that the inmates were getting out of line some kind of way. And although it's upsetting and stressing the rest of the prisoners, Kenoi is getting a little bit more stress because you have to understand he's on short time too. He's almost out of here. He doesn't want anything to mess that up for him. Now we don't know what he has to get back to, but he wants out of that damn prison. He ain't trying to stay. That's for damn sure. Now they do their next shift, and during their next shift, Olaf just breaks. He breaks. He has a complete reaction. He's slow. He's unresponsive. And then before the end of the shift, he's out of there. And they don't know what's going on, but they're trying to cover him so the rest of the guards don't see what's going on. In their next shift change, after that 12 hours, they're going back to their cells. They find that Olaf is becoming unresponsive, weak. They're having to carry him, and they need a medic. Andor's there with him. Kino is there with him, and they call for a medic. And the medic comes down to help Olaf on the catwalk. Now, while they're on the catwalk, what the medic is saying is really leading in a sense. And Andor starts asking more questions, like what happened on level 2. And the medic does something clever, which is he asks for a bag and a trolley because he's already determined he cannot help Olaf. It's too late. Now, upon the second ask from Andor about what's going on, he asks the guard for a bag and a trolley again, and the guard goes to check and see what's happening. And the medic finally tells Andor and Kino what happened. That somehow there was a mistake made, and a prisoner from level 4 that was set to release was put back into Gen Pop on level 2. And all the prisoners got wise to it, and it started a problem. It started a ruckus. And because that happened, the facility shocked the whole room, both shifts, all 100 men, 50 and 50, 12-hour shifts apiece. All 100 men were killed to keep that quiet. Now, Kino and Andor, hearing this, are shocked. The medic gives Olaf something to put him out of his misery, and Olaf dies. He had a massive stroke. He was already dead. He was pretty much brain dead is what it was. So it didn't matter if you took him back to his bunk or not. He wasn't going to be any use to anybody anymore. But after hearing this information that they killed 100 men, and since they had to kill 100 men in that facility, nobody's leaving now. Nobody can leave now because they're not going to let word of that get out. Now, this is the misconception that I've heard from people that they're thinking that the people were never getting out anyway. It was a possibility. But the reason that a mistake was made, the mistake was a person that was supposed to be brought out was put back in. And because they were put back in and it was a mistake, it enraged the rest of the prisoners. That's why they all had to die. Because nobody wanted that to actually get out, that they had made a mistake and put a prisoner back in that was supposed to leave. You can think about what kind of unrest that would create in a prison population if they weren't allowed to leave. Then what are they working for? Now, from finding out this information, Kino is actually kind of broken. His belief in what he was doing in this place and how to get out of this place is kind of broken. And he's just basically in shock. But while he's in shock, about finding out this new information, Andor hits him up again about the information that he's wanted since the beginning of this episode, is how many guards are on this level at a time. And he's been pressing Kino the whole time about that because he knew Kino had information. He knew Kino had thought about escaping at some point, even though he said not to think about it. He knew Kino had thought about it before. And sure enough, at the end of this episode, when he asks Kino again about how many guards, Kino tells him no more than 12, proving the fact that he had thought about leaving and escaping there a long time ago. But he put it out of his mind. Now it's at the forefront of his mind. He has to get out of there. And the only way he knows he's going to get out of there is escaping. So there's no point in holding on to that information anymore. Which means for the next episode, we have to have that, escape. That escape plan has to be put into motion. And they got to get out of there however they can. Because now nobody's leaving. It don't matter how much time you got. It can be 2 shifts. You're not leaving. You're going to stay in there. You're going to stay in there till they kill you. And that is the episode. Now, while that doesn't seem like a lot of action going on, it is very telling of this episode and how this show goes, and that the performances are awesome. Andy Serkis's performance as Kino in these scenes are awesome. Losing his stuff one moment and then realizing, I got to keep these people together. I got to keep them on task. And then kind of the mental breaking when he finds out that nobody's getting out now. Nobody will be leaving. And how that really just kind of crushes him. You see it in his eyes. It does kind of crush him. And that's when he decides to help Andor. Like, no, we got to get the fuck out of here. That was a good episode. Was it the best episode in the show? No, it wasn't. But it was an awesome episode. With all the elements I like. Good character acting. Good story. Good dialogue. It was all there. And there were stakes. You know now that these men in this prison are fighting for their lives when they try to escape. They're fighting for their lives. And nothing is more dangerous than when it's fighting for its life. No creature. None. And that's what these men will be fighting for. So I'm juiced to see the next episode. I'm really excited to see the next episode this week, and I will be looking forward to it. But that is my review of Andor episode 9. Nobody's listening. And in fact, nobody was listening. So like, share, subscribe, support the stream if you feel so inclined. And I will see you guys next time. Peace.
You want to talk to me?
You're right again. We can't wait, but it's all an illusion.